All right. Welcome back. Or welcome for the first time. I don't want to assume. Somebody look around and say, it's my first time here. The Malefe Kete Asante Institute, 5535 Germantown Avenue, and you are in for a treat today. Right on time, I guess always on time to talk about politics nowadays, but we have a titan, of honesty and speaking truth to power, and there's so much compromising going on. I think it's refreshing. I'm not going to name any names. I wouldn't be up here shouting out Hakeem Jeffries. I'm not going to be up here shouting out Cory Booker. I'm not going to be up here. Next thing you know, Nancy Pelosi going to have her kente cloth and her kufi taking a knee in here. I don't want no problems with none of this symbolic virtue signaling fake. Okay, but no, it's refreshing. Yeah, and now that you can see just how much you cost. Now that I think the brother Charlemagne called him APAC Shakur. That's what he called the people that got bought off by APAC. Because now you can see the receipt. It's like auction block, like a tag. They know you've been bought, and now they can look up the receipts and see how much it costs to buy you. So it's good to know in the tradition of the great Shirley Chisholm that there's still many among us that are unbought and unbossed, right? And I love the fact that Michael Coard has always exemplified, the essence of that tradition. Because when he says things that you don't even like, and he don't care, he says, this is who I'm endorsing, and the people say, why are you endorsing him? And he say, that's because I'm who I'm endorsing. And I say, I like that. I like somebody who can have an unpopular opinion and stand on it. The young people say standing on business. Because in our community right now, we really need voices of sincerity. One of the things I was proud about, I told Dr. Asante, back in the day, they say they don't trust the leaders that never got arrested. I'm not looking to get arrested. I'm not. But I was offered some money to be quiet. I was going to some university. And I remember that moment. I remember when they had something called the Jewish onslaught, Tony Martin, right? I remember Leonard Jeffries talking to former Mayor Koch, right? I remember the attacks, and I was like, man, I'm in some good company here. Here I am getting attacked, and they trying to buy me. I felt like I finally made it, But then I realized that I had to make sure I didn't take the check. I said, no, you ain't make it yet. You only make it when you push the check back across the table, And I knew that I had arrived and that I would make Dr. Asante proud because it was a big check, When I pushed it, I looked at it, I watched it go away, I thought about all the things I could buy and all the bills I could pay, but it wasn't worth my soul. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. I said, how can I go before the people and y'all ask me a question and I say, well, we can't discuss that, We reached an agreement. And I said, wait a minute, man. You go ahead and sit down in the back, You can't introduce Michael Coard after you done got paid off and bought, So I'm going to let y'all know right now, if y'all ever see me on CNN, I will not be sponsored by APAC. And if they ever give me the Farrakhan litmus test and try to make me denounce or deny any black leader in a way that nobody else is asked to do ever in history, I'm going to P.D. Green them, and that's going to be my last day. Because, if y'all know the story of P.D. Green, he went and told it like it was, and that's the last time you saw him. But I'll be right back at Institute, so I might not be on CNN many times. Shout out to Mark Lamont Hill, but I'll still be respected in the community. And the man today, a graduate of Cheney University, make sure I say that nice and loud, English education and political science, went on to the Ohio State, to study law. And I think it's amazing. He specializes in murder cases. Y'all know, like, that's heavy stuff. I think he's dropping it heavy when he's talking about politics. Can you imagine going from politics to murderers? And sometimes he got to be the one defending the person being accused of murder. A murder case is hard enough, but when you're on, the other side of the situation, you got to make sure that you get enough sleep and you study and you say the right things, and you literally have somebody's life in your hands. So I've always thought it was amazing to me that he has so much poise and joy, and that he exudes real peace and manhood and confidence. I think he had a Louis Vuitton briefcase when I first saw him. I said, who's this black man? Looked like he stepped off a GQ magazine. And they said he was defending some people that was associated with the MOVE situation. I didn't know a lot about MOVE, but I knew who didn't like MOVE. Right? I knew that there were some sides to choose, and I saw that he had chose. and he was standing on it, and he wasn't ashamed, of the side that he chose, and he chose the side of the people and the side of justice. So without further ado, as he walks down the aisle, make some noise for the angriest black man in America, Michael Coard.
This rap is mine, motherfucker. What you heard is what you hearing. That's what you hearing. Listen,
That's the best intro I've ever had in my entire life. Let's get started. I've heard I have 3.5, 4 hours. All right. Or about 30 minutes, 40 minutes. I want to jump into a couple things very quickly. First of all, every time I come here and speak at the Molefi Kete Asante Institute, I always feel like I'm kind of like a fraud. And what I mean by that is this: 90% of the people here know exactly the same thing I know, and some know even more. So it's really not a lecture as much as it is a conversation. And I'm hoping that it's a two-way street. Having said that, there's some stuff I want to put up on the screen. And I think I just pressed this arrow here. All right, perfect. They're making it easy for me. You should see right now the Angry Black Man News. You all see that? Now, here's the thing. And I'm going to speak in generalities, nothing in particular. I used to write for the Tribune. Many people think I still write for the Tribune. I no longer write for the Tribune. I love the Tribune. I consider it Philadelphia's best newspaper. I still subscribe. But far too often when Black people become successful in society, they tend to become part of that society. And I get it. But I don't care how much money I make or how far I go as a lawyer. Certain things I'm not going to do. And my dispute with the Tribune was almost like a father-son kind of situation, where even after the dispute, you still love your father, you still love your son. But there's certain things that I'm not even going to do for my father, and that's compromising and selling out. It's a very long story, so I'll give you the 30-second version. I was hired by the Tribune about 11 years ago, and they hired me because of my reputation as the angriest Black man in America. So you knew what you were getting. The reason that you brought me in is because you knew what you were getting. And everything was cool until it wasn't. I began to rock the boat a little bit, especially politically, because the Tribune, like every other newspaper, have their editorial board and they will endorse candidates. I didn't like the candidates they endorsed. And most of them were establishment Democrats. And, I want to kind of hit the establishment Democrats hard with one hand and then lift them up with the other hand, because it's a pragmatic thing. But here's what I mean by what I'm saying. So in 2017, a rebel in the political system showed up, Larry Krasner. Nobody knew him, but he was this white boy who I had worked with for 10, 15 years. Every time there were some poor Black folks beaten down by the cops, charged with phony crimes, I'd love to say that most of my Black brothers and sisters stood next to me, but it was Larry Krasner. Larry Krasner was always there standing with me for 10, 15 years. In fact, we had a sit down, but we had a hands up, don't shoot. After Michael Brown was murdered in Ferguson, I rounded up all the lawyers at the courthouse, and we had a demonstration inside the courthouse. And the sheriff at the time of the Philadelphia court system was going to arrest all the lawyers. Well, we had Larry Krasner as our lawyer, representing the lawyers protesting. So my point is, here comes Larry Krasner, 2017, decides to shake up the system, run for DA, and the Tribune did their establishment Democrat thing and endorsed the safe guy. I'm like, no, the white boy here is cool. I know because I work with him. And once I endorsed Larry, you talk about, I know nothing about analytics and newspapers. They can tell how many people read the articles, how long they stay reading articles. And my column was blowing up. Every time there was an election, a primary election, a general election, Michael Coard's column blowing up. The Tribune had their own editorial board endorsements. Brothers and sisters wasn't really feeling it like that. And so every time there's an election, I'm endorsing the rebel. I'm endorsing the revolutionary. I'm endorsing the progressive. And the Tribune got tired of that. And they told me right before the May primary of 2025 that they had I can't tell you everything, but I'll tell you stuff I can't tell you. Basically, what they said is that nobody at the Tribune can write endorsements anymore. I'm like, God damn it, I'm the only one writing them. So you act like you're talking to everybody, but I'm the only one writing them. It's me, it's the editorial board. Nobody's filling the editorial board anymore. So I'm taking away the shine. So they told me I couldn't write it. I told them I can't work there. And the rest is history. There's more to it, but I'm not going to share all that with you. Bottom line is that I still love the Tribune. I still subscribe to the Tribune, but just like a father and son can have a disagreement, we still love each other. So continue to read the Tribune, but follow my endorsements. All right. So Angry Black Man News came out of that. So after I quit in May, I decided to do my own endorsement on social media. And I kind of jokingly called it the Angry Black Man News. But it got so much traction on social media, people thought it was a real newspaper and asked if they could subscribe. And I said, well, it wasn't, but it is now. So beginning in January 2026, I'm actually going to start the Angry Black Man News. So keep your dialogue. Yeah, a round of applause is cool. Very cool. And very quick, before I go to the next item on the screen, you see here, Angry Black Man News, New York City Mayor Mamdani, Pennsylvania Supremes, Donahue Doherty, and Weck, New Jersey Governor. You see all the names there. The reason why it was so important to endorse these candidates is to be pragmatic. A real revolutionary takes whatever steps are necessary to move forward in the liberation of his or her people. Let me repeat that. A real revolutionary does whatever is necessary to move closer to liberation for his people. What does that mean? Does that mean taking it to the street with weapons and bombs and all that? Well, maybe someday it might. But before it does that, there's other things you can do. And those other things can be as strategic, as effective without any of the counterproductivity. So when you see these names here and how I was encouraging people to vote for them, and they did, one of the things I kept telling people, when you look at many of these people who won are establishment party Democrats. So how can me, a Pan-African socialist, endorse establishment Democrats? Because as crazy as I am, at heart, I'm a pragmatist. You can be revolutionary all day. You can be the baddest revolutionary. You can get an AK-14 right now and run out to Germantown Avenue and shoot every cop you see. But what's that going to do for the movement? You might catch 3 or 4 of them, but you're going to be done in 3 or 4 minutes. So you got the heart, you got the ideology, but you don't have the pragmatic strategy. I don't need black men with guns right now. I need black men and women with books. And I need black men and women with consciousness and with strategy. So that's why we have to do what we have to do. So when you look at these names here, the people who won, you see at the bottom, it reads, well, I'm going to keep that there. But thank you, because you're the pro here. Because I don't know what the hell I'm doing when it comes to technology. That's the up one right there, I assume. So the up is up and the down is down. All right, that kind of makes sense. All right, so at the bottom, going up, I think it's going up. Is it? Maybe I'm not hitting it right. I just hit that one. Let me see if I'm doing what you did. Okay, I thought I hit that, but maybe I didn't. All right, cool. Oh, this is easy. All right. So you see at the bottom, in a nationwide referendum on Trump, and by the way, that's the last time I'm going to say his name, because I believe that Beelzebub or whatever you call the name and it shows up and does what it does. So we can just call him the guy in the White House, Orange Hitler, dump, whatever. But in a nationwide, and by the way, folks, I want to be clear. Everything that I say here is simply based on my position. It's no reflection necessarily of Dr. Asante or the Institute or Dr. Ade or anybody else. This is simply me. So if I say something that's really controversial, let me put it that way, it's coming from me and not from them. So you see at the bottom, in a nationwide referendum on the guy in the White House, America voted for diversity, for equity, and for inclusion, and against fascism, against racism, and against misogyny. Today, which was Tuesday the 4th, was a good day. And you see, as I said, these are most of them, with the exception of Larry Krasner, establishment Democrats. But as I said, would it have been more effective for me to run out into the middle of Broad Market with an AK-47 and blast every Republican I see? Or would it have been more strategic to say, okay, we need to move forward. How do we most effectively move forward? And by the way, when you talk about black men and women with guns taken to the system, many of them were agent provocateurs. The first thing the FBI would do is to tell a progressive revolutionary group to get a gun and shoot a cop. And now you're thinking, wow, this guy's hardcore. Go out and shoot cops. Let me do that. And the movement is crushed. So anytime you're part of a revolutionary organization and somebody start talking crazy, they're not revolutionaries. They're traitors. They're counterproductive. They're counter-revolutionary. That's critically important. But my point before I move to the next screen, since I know how to operate the technology now, before the election, I told people that America in 2025 was where Italy was in 1922, shortly before Mussolini. That America in 2025 was where Germany was in 1933, shortly before Hitler. And America in 2025 is where Spain was in 1939, shortly before Francisco Franco. And by the way, I often make it clear when I talk about these horrible people in world history, and the leading horrible person, at least in Eurocentric history, is Hitler. But I always got to let people know that as horrific as Hitler was, and he was a monster, King Leopold of Belgium was worse. So I wish when Black people start talking about horrible men in history, yeah, you can mention Hitler because people know that name. And then say, but if you think he was a monster, and he was, what about King Leopold of Belgium, who murdered 15 million people in the Congo? Hitler got his 6 million clear. The last time I checked, 6 million is less than 15 million. So if we talk about monsters in world history, we got to talk about King Leopold in Belgium. For 23 years, raped, robbed, pillaged the Congo. But my point is, America, in terms of countries that are considered first world, is right now, or at least before November 4, right on the doorstep of where Germany, where Spain, and where Italy was. That's the first thing I want to say. The second thing I want to say before I get to the next item on the screen is, when I talk about elections, I start with the premise of what Brother Malcolm talked about when he talked about the ballot or the bullet. And any great idea is almost like, and Dr. Ade can attest to this, any great idea you come up with is almost like a great rapper. And you can't be a great rapper unless you take a little bit from people who came before you. If I'm a great rapper, I got to take something from Rakim. I got to take something from him. I got to take something from the people who came before me. If I'm a great philosopher, I have to go back to the great philosophers and take some stuff from them and build upon it. So my presentation today is building upon Brother Malcolm's The Ballot or the Bullet. And I'm calling it The Ballot is the Bullet. Let me repeat that. The ballot is the bullet. One of the things that we need to understand is that Black people have to be able to move forward. And there's only two ways to move forward: through the ballot or the bullet. We can't do it with the bullet. That's just never going to happen. Why? Because we're only 13% of the population, and we're not even that solid 13%. Of that 13%, it might be 6%, about half, who are men. Of that 6% who are men, they might be 1% who are willing to do something. And of that 1% willing to do something, there might be 0.5% who are ready to do something. So we would get slaughtered. Remember that movie Dirty Harry with Clint Eastwood? There's a Black man on the ground. There's a gun next to the Black man. And Clint Eastwood says, "Make my day." Reach for the gun. I want you to reach for the gun. That's what white people in America want us to do. Reach for that gun and give us a reason. So that's why when I hear people talk about the armed struggle right now in America, they're either naive or they're agents, one or the other, because we can't win that battle right now. In fact, it would be a suicide mission. So if we can't win it by the bullet, we got to win it by the ballot. That's why I'm calling this presentation today, The Ballot is the Bullet. Before I get to the next PowerPoint, and it's an article that I wrote in Tribune, let me just start by saying, okay, this guy, Michael X, is coming in here like this big time highfalutin lawyer telling us who to vote for. Why should you care what I say about who you should vote for? Well, there's three reasons why. The first reason is, and for me, this is important, but not the most important. Everybody who knows me, whether you love me or you hate me, you know I'm about Black people. You know I'm about the liberation of Black people. So we can debate on other stuff. The question comes up, hey, is Mike Coard about fighting for Black people? No dispute about that. So the first thing, the first reason you should listen to me is that, one, I'm about the liberation of Black people, and I've dedicated my adult life to that. No debate on that. That's the first reason why you should accept my endorsement. The second thing is this. I do my homework. Because I'm a lawyer, I was trained in law school to do research. So when you go into courtrooms, you can make your case without embarrassing yourself. As a journalist, I know there's haters out there that question everything I write in the newspaper. So I know they're coming at me. So I'm dotting every I, I'm crossing every T. So the second reason to listen is that I do my homework. But the third reason is probably the greatest reason. Every other entity that issues endorsements has a vested interest, has a hidden agenda, has an ulterior motive. I don't want a job. I don't want a grant. I don't want money. I don't want anything. So if I don't want anything, I have no motivation apart from fighting for my people. When you see these newspapers and these other elected officials and these CEOs endorsing people, they get something from it. I don't get anything from it. I don't want anything from it. So those are the three reasons why I say that you should consider my position seriously. Having said that, why should you vote at all? Even apart from who you should vote for, the question then becomes, why should you vote at all? And one of the things I want to make clear today, because I really get hyped up about issues that I'm really into, even though I'm going to be hyped up because I always do, what I'd like you all to do is to understand that this is going to be a conversation back and forth. I don't talk to people in order to just make my point. I talk to people to see if there's any weaknesses in my point. There's a big difference there. I'm not debating with you in order to beat you. I'm having you test what I'm about. And if you can challenge what I say, I'm not about being right, because I can be right when I say E equals MC squared. I have no idea what that means, but it is true. E equals MC squared, but I don't know what it means. So I'm right, but I have no understanding about it. So when I make my arguments to people, I've done the research, and I want you to come at me. I want you to challenge me, because I'm here not to make my point. I'm here to see how solid my point is. And that's one of the reasons why I love what Malcolm represented, because there was always growth in Malcolm. I mean, from a street criminal to a thorough jailhouse lawyer to a member of the Nation of Islam to author, he just kept growing. He never stopped where he was and said, even how he would attack Martin sometimes. He began to move closer to Malcolm, because it was never move closer to Martin. It was never from Malcolm's standpoint to be right. It was about learning. And if your position is much more solid than mine is, then I'm going to go with that. So when I ask the question why you should vote, there's three basic reasons why you should vote. But I'm going to go into more detail when I go to the article in the Tribune. The first reason is this. The first rule of warfare is to find out what your enemy doesn't want you to do, and then you do that. So if two countries are fighting and one cannot withstand an air attack, you send your Air Force. They can't withstand a ground attack. You send your Army. They can't withstand a sea attack. You send your Navy. So you find out their weaknesses. Well, there are plenty of weaknesses. I'm going to go into more detail later with America's voting system, because the enemy doesn't want us to vote. Why do they pass all these laws to make it difficult for us to vote? There's a reason why. So if they don't want us to vote, that's why we should vote. The other reason that you should vote is, people often say, well, I'm voting because my ancestors died for the right to vote. No, your ancestors didn't die for the right to vote. They were murdered for your right to vote. So if you knew that your mom was going to vote, if you knew your father, Octavius Catto, was going to vote, and he was murdered and never got a chance to vote, she never got a chance to vote, are you telling me that knowing what you know about them, trying to do this thing, getting murdered on their way to do it, and you're not going to pick up the baton and run with it? So if they were murdered for your right to vote, you ought to support that. And the third reason why you should vote comes from me as a lawyer. How do people get selected for jury duty? Two ways. One, voter rolls and motor vehicle rolls. So if you got a car, or if you vote, vote, got a car, there's a greater chance you're going to be selected for a jury. And if you know that the so-called criminal justice system, which is really the criminal punishment system, because there's no justice in it, if you know that this system is corrupt, and it is, you can get on the jury and do the right thing. You know, if a young kid is falsely accused of killing a cop, he's young, he's black, he's from the hood, and it's this white cop who's got all these awards and medals, and there's something took place and the cop is dead, and now it's a trial. Instead of what we lawyers say about you're presumed innocent, that black young man's going to be presumed guilty. And the whole weight of the system is going to come down on him. But you, as a juror, you can come in there and stop all that. As one juror, you can stop the system. So by being on juries, you can be a real revolutionary. So the 3 reasons for voting is: 1, enemy doesn't want you to do it. 2, you get a better chance to be on the jury. And 3, for me, which is critically important, your ancestors were murdered for your rights. Those are 3 basic reasons. I'm going to go into more detail later. And later is now. You see here, and this is important. Everything here is important. And what I'm going to try to do is to get through everything in about 45 to 50 minutes. And Dr. Ade will give me the signal for 5 minutes left. This is critically important for me. November 8, 2022, this is an article I wrote in the Tribune. And the thing that makes it so important to me in this article, and sometimes I get misty-eyed thinking about what could have been between me and the Tribune until some other stuff happened. And by the way, 3 white-owned newspapers asked me to write for them. So far, I said no, but we will see. Anyway, so let me just go into the article. And I'm encouraging people, I hope you got your phones out, your pens and pads out, because I want you to actually get a copy of these articles, and it's still online. And by the way, if for whatever reason you can't access the articles, just reach me at michaelcoardx@gmail.com. michaelcoardx@gmail.com, and I'll make sure I get the article to you. And I'm just going to show you a few paragraphs of each article, but the first one I'm going to talk about is from October 28, 2022. So just email me at michaelcoardx, MichaelCoard, letter X as in Malcolm X. michaelcoardx, MichaelCoard, letter X, gmail.com, and say, yo, that second item you showed on the PowerPoint was an article in the Tribune from October 28 of 2022 entitled 10 Reasons Why Blacks Must Vote. And I'll get the article to you. I'm not going to read it all here, but I do want to highlight some of the pertinent parts. For example, this is written in 2022. This is shocking. Remember what I said about how the first rule of warfare is to find out what your enemy doesn't want you to do, and then you do that thing. Here's what I wrote in 2022. As of April 8, 2022, as documented by the States United Democracy Center, racist Republican officials, quote, in 33 states are now considering 229 bills that would allow state legislatures to criminalize or interfere with elections. And a total of 50 bills have been enacted or adopted, 32 last year, which would have been 2021, and 18 thus far this year. All I'm saying is that as of 2022, 33 of the 50 states took action to criminalize your right to vote. Why would they do that? So when I hear Black, quote unquote, revolutionaries say don't vote, I'm not going to call them traitors, but I will say this. The legal definition of treason is, quote, to give aid and comfort to the enemy, unquote. So treason means you're a traitor. And in the United States Code, treason is defined as giving aid and comfort to the enemy. Well, the enemy in 33 states wants to take away your right to vote. And you as a Black man, Black woman are not voting, you're giving them aid and comfort. They're trying to block you from voting, and you're not even waiting for them to physically stop you. You're saying, I'm not voting. Well, you just gave them aid and comfort. And as of 2022, it was 33 states that either passed laws or tried to pass laws. Let me continue. Another important point. Prior to that, as of December 15, 2021, there have been at least 262 bills introduced by Republicans in 41 states that would interfere with the election administration, and 32 of these bills have become laws in 17 states. So it went from 33 states to 41 states, and 32 of the 262 bills became law. Again, your enemy doesn't want you to vote, and you're not voting. You're doing exactly what your enemy wants to do. That's where the aid and comfort comes in. I'm going to quickly go through, I'm going to jump to the next slide. This is good because I got some highlighted points here, but I want to make sure I get through as many things as I can because I don't want to leave here and forget something. So I'm going to be speaking fast. And before I do that, I got so hyped about my fancy new jacket that I forgot to take it off. So now I'm sweating. So let me take this off. But very quickly, there's 10 things that I laid out, or 10 reasons I laid out about why Blacks should vote. And I'm going to fly through this and speak fast. And speaking of speaking fast, a lot of times people accuse me of speaking too fast. I accuse them of listening too slow. So if you speed up your listening, we'll be on the same page. So here's 10 key reasons why we must vote. And I'm going to fly through them because I got to get through all of this. One, we got to politically avenge our ancestors. They were enslaved. They were brutalized victims of Jim Crow, sharecropping, lynching, gerrymandering, redlining, all that stuff. They were not permitted to vote. They fought to get us in a position where we could vote. That's number one. Number two, the government of the United States of America was founded on racism. When I say founded on racism, I'm talking about the Declaration of Independence, 1776. There were 56 white male property owners that signed the Declaration of Independence. Let me repeat that and speak slowly. 56 white male property owners that signed the Declaration of Independence. 41 of them were involved in the slave trade. That means 75% of the people who declared their independence from Britain were enslaving your ancestors. So that document came from them. The other thing, and let me quickly go through this, the Constitution of 1789 established a racist electoral college. I could talk more about that later, but that simply gave more power to the former quote unquote slave owning states to have much more power in the South in voting for the president than states in the North had. And by the way, when we talk about the Constitution, I, as a lawyer, I'm supposed to praise and worship and honor the Constitution because we lawyers have to take an oath to uphold it. And yeah, I do it, but they don't know if I have my fingers crossed behind me when I'm giving my oath. To the state Supreme Court, if they're watching this, I didn't have my fingers crossed. I meant every word I said when I took the oath. So we're all good. Kind of, sort of. Wink, wink, nod, nod. But my point is, we look at the Constitution, and then we talk about, okay, the Constitution has some flaws in it, but at least there were amendments that improved upon it. And yeah, that's kind of true, but it's almost like being in hell and being removed from 1,000 degrees in hell to 900 degrees in hell. Well, you can say it's kind of cooler, but 900, 1,000, I'm still burning in hell. So here's the Constitution in a nutshell. The 13th Amendment would quote unquote free the slaves. And by the way, I never used the word slave because we weren't slaves. We were enslaved. We just didn't have enough guns in Africa. And that's how this thing happened the way it did. But my point is the 13th Amendment, it was actually written by members of the Confederacy. There were at least about 25 former members of the Confederate Army that were now part of the new government. So they crafted, along with the North, the 13th Amendment. That's why it says slavery and involuntary servitude are hereby abolished, but it's a comma there. You would think that if slavery and involuntary servitude are hereby abolished, it would be an exclamation point or a period. No, it's a comma. It says slavery and involuntary servitude are hereby abolished, comma, except following conviction of a crime. There's a book by a guy named white guy, Doug Blackman, called Worse Than Slavery. And he makes the argument that the whole notion of convict leasing was worse than slavery. Convict leasing basically was this. 13th Amendment comes along, frees Black people, but then the states make these crazy laws, like loitering laws, like unemployment laws, like traveling by the pass law. So now you were freed, but you didn't have a job. That's a crime. You were free, but you were loitering because you didn't have a house. That's a crime. You were free, but you tried to jump on a train in the South to get to the North, that's a crime. So once you get these crimes, now you're taken to the county jail and you're leased out to the former quote unquote slaveholder. And then when they realized that that was so profitable, they got major corporations to begin leasing Black people. So the whole notion of the Constitution, even the great 13th Amendment, has some holes in it. Let me just fly through this. Number 5, Supreme Court in 1857, Dred Scott ruled that Blacks had no rights that whites are bound to respect. I'm not going through all this, but many of you have probably not heard of a case in 2016. And the case in 2016, and again, email me, I'll send it all to you, but it's the Hodes versus Kansas Attorney General. Hodes, H-O-D-E-S versus Kansas Attorney General. Now, remember I said, this is in 2016. The state attorney general for Kansas in 2016, when making a legal argument in a brief in an unrelated case, cited the Dred Scott decision to support his argument. Although he was a racist, he was a very smart lawyer, because the Dred Scott decision has never been overturned by the Supreme Court. Now, many people make the argument that, well, yeah, the 13th Amendment kind of counteracted it. Yeah, it kind of did, but I didn't say that there was no congressional action. I said no Supreme Court decision has overturned Dred Scott. That's why, despite that being an 1857 case, a white lawyer for the Kansas government in 2016 was able to cite the Dred Scott decision to support his argument. It was about women's rights, and he was talking about how certain people might not have rights under the Constitution, and just as women don't have the right to control their bodies in connection with abortion, yeah, that might not sound good, but that's basically the law. For example, let's go back to the Dred Scott decision. So my point is, in 2016, a lawyer for a state government was able to make the argument that the Dred Scott law is still valid. And it kind of sort of is, because the Dred Scott said that Black people have no rights that white people are bound to respect. Well, what's changed? I mean, really not much has changed. So as racist as that decision was, it was basically correct. Let me fly through this. All right, so this, just ask me for the article, because I got so much stuff here, I got to squeeze it all in. So that was the third item that's on our PowerPoint. And you can read all of this stuff later. Let me see if there's anything in particular that I wanted to highlight. All right, 2016, a whopping, yeah, this is important, number 9. In 2016, a whopping 47%, follow me on this. There was a poll done by Time magazine in 2016, and they asked Republicans what their position was on the 13th Amendment. Do you support it? Do you oppose it? Are you not really feeling it? 47% of Republican supporters of the guy in the White House in 2016 disapproved of the 13th Amendment. Think about that. Think about that. Think about that. That's 2016. And then I go on the last item, read number 9 again and think about it. And that's why we got to vote very quickly. And I think we got time here. In fact, I know we got time here. We're going to keep moving. By the way, when I leave here, I'm supposed to be going to the jail to see a client. But he's going to be there for a while, so it don't matter whether I get there at 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock or next week. So, but I still have to rush out of here. All right, we're going to keep it moving. The next item, let me see if there's anything I wanted to mention in connection with that. All right, that was the 10 reasons. Oh, before I get to the fourth, let me just go to the third one because I want to stay on track. This article I wrote in January of 2025, an interesting article, Black voting rights taking a hit 60 years after passage of the Voting Rights Act. That's important stuff. And again, to my revolutionary comrades who think that we shouldn't vote, you have to ask yourself, why would the Republicans be taking action to violate not just violate, but to void the Voting Rights Act of 1965? The answer is pretty clear. They don't want us to vote. That's critically important. That's why we need to fight back against this. And I think there's something in here that I wanted to highlight. I'm going to jump to something in about 30 seconds. But when I talk about how I despise establishment Democrats, but in many elections, I endorse them. Let's look at Barack Obama, a great role model for little black boys and little black girls. But if you ask me, did he do anything really to benefit black people while in office? I'd like to think I'm a student of politics, but I really can't say a whole lot that he did. One of the things I respect about the Republicans, they have an agenda and they do damage while they're in office. The Democrats come along like, nah, we got to work together. We're not doing anything. As a black man, you should have just wrecked that place when you got there and decide I'm not running again, but just do as much as you possibly could. But I have to give Barack Obama credit for the things that he's done. When we talk about the Voting Rights Act, that all comes from a 2013 decision in the U.S. Supreme Court called Shelby versus Holder. And Brother Malcolm always says that when black folks speak, they got to make it plain. So I'm not going to give you that highfalutin legal jargon. I'll just tell you this, that the U.S. Supreme Court in 2013 in the Shelby versus Holder case basically gutted the Voting Rights Act of 1965. There was a part in that Voting Rights Act called the Preclearance Clause. And the Preclearance Clause said this: hey, Southern states, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, we're the federal government. And we know the stuff you've been doing to black people throughout your history. So before you make any changes in your voting laws in your state, you got to get preclearance from the federal government. We're like your big brother. We got to see what you're doing. And the Voting Rights Act listed that. Well, the U.S. Supreme Court in 2013 filed a lawsuit against Barack Obama and his Attorney General, Eric Holder, saying that preclearance stuff might have been good in 1965, but here we are in 2013, it's all good. We don't treat black people like that anymore. So the Supreme Court overturned it. Now, here's where we got to be pragmatic. I know that Barack Obama is not Malcolm X. I know he's not Huey Newton. I know he's not any hardcore revolutionary. But I try to tell people, black people in America, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Let me repeat that. Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Somebody's going to be president. It's going to be a Democrat or Republican. It's not going to be a third party candidate. Somebody's going to be governor. It's going to be a Democrat or Republican. Somebody's going to be mayor. It's going to be a Democrat or Republican. You can either say, I hate them all and bail out, which is what Republicans want you to do anyway. They don't want you to vote. You just gave them what they wanted. You can yell in your corner, be an ideological purist, talk about socialism and Pan-Africanism and communism till your face turns blue, or in our case, turns white or whatever. But my point is, if revolution is about moving closer to liberation for your people, standing in the corner yelling is not going to do that. So what you do is you say, okay, I understand Barack Obama is not the revolutionary or the vanguard for black people, but he and the Democrats support the Voting Rights Act. The Republicans don't. He appointed Eric Holder, who's not a hardcore, who's not even a progressive like a Larry Krasner type, but still they support the Voting Rights Act. And here comes the Republicans in Shelby County, Alabama, and they say, we want to do away with it. So you can blast the establishment Democrats all you want. You can blast Barack Obama all you want. You can blast Eric Holder all you want. But we got to realize that it's all about moving black people closer. I'm a lawyer today because establishment Democrats got laws like this passed. And there was affirmative action. Ohio State University said, who's this black kid from Cheney? He got these good grades. We're going to give him a full academic scholarship and full tuition and all that kind of stuff. Not because I was a great student in college, even though I was, but that's not the reason. The reason is establishment Democrats took an approach different from Republicans. And again, I want to be clear. I despise establishment Democrats, but I'm not an ideological purist. I want to move our people forward. And I'm going to talk to you about what ideological purists do. We're going to have a Q&A shortly. Dr. Adair is going to let me know when I got like 10 minutes left, and then I can shut this down to hear from you. I was texting a WRD listener earlier today, and I gave this listener, who's a close friend of mine, this information I was going to be talking about just to get his or her position, because he and I disagree in regard to how best America should deal with the issue of Zionism. And Zionism, as we know, is basically killing Palestinians. That's essentially what Zionism is. So what do we do about that? And the person making the argument, Mike, you were talking about endorsing Madam Vice President Kamala Harris, and she's a Zionist, and the establishment Democrats are. And I'm like, yeah, that might be true, but, and I'll explain the but in just a second. So very quickly, so Voting Rights Act, is there anything here I wanted to highlight in particular? I talked about Shelby County, the Brennan Center. We're good there. Got something highlighted here. I already talked about that. Keep it moving. Got that. All right. So before I get to 10 minutes. All right. So I'm definitely going to squeeze this in. When I said don't allow the perfect to be the enemy of the good, let's look at Madam Vice President Kamala Harris and let's look at the orange Nazi in the White House. Well, Madam Vice President is not Assata Shakur, is not Angela Davis, and is definitely a Zionist. We get all that. I got all that. But check this out. Many of you probably don't know that Sister Angela Davis endorsed Kamala Harris. Angela Davis has more revolutionary credibility than anybody in here. She literally went through hell. She endorsed Kamala Harris. You want more? I got more. In the Philadelphia area, a group called the Black Muslim Leadership Council, pro-Palestinian organization, supported Kamala Harris. The next mayor of the city of New York, Mamdani, supported Kamala Harris. You probably didn't know that. And these are legitimate revolutionaries. Have they sold out to the establishment? Probably not. But check out what Angela Davis says. This is when Biden was running before Madam Vice President took over. So here's her quote. She says, when asked why was she endorsing Biden, her response was, quote, "I don't see this election as being about choosing a candidate who will be able to lead us in the right direction. It will be about choosing a candidate who can be most effectively pressured into allowing more space for the evolving anti-racist movement," unquote. She's basically saying that with Biden in or Kamala Harris, we can protest without being sent to an ICE detention center. And she's right about that. Can anybody say that she sold out? Of course not. Anybody say that the Black Muslim Leadership Council sold out? Of course not. Can they say that Mamdani sold out? No, these were strategic. In fact, speaking of Mamdani, people make the argument, well, he voted uncommitted. And he did in the primary. So did I. I told people in the Democratic primary that I didn't like the platform of Madam Vice President Kamala Harris. So when you go vote in the primary as a Democrat, vote uncommitted. But then when she won general election, you got to put all that behind you because now she's running against Orange Hitler. It's as simple as that. It's as simple as that. Either she's going to be the president or he's going to be the president. I don't care how much you despise her politically, ideologically. Can anybody make the argument that she'd have been worse than Orange Hitler? Nobody can make. I don't care what your position is. Nobody, every Black person in America, every brown person in America, every gay person in America, every woman person in America would be better off today if she were president. Is she Angela Davis? Of course not. Assata Shakur? Of course not. But we got to be pragmatic. He was going to be president or she was going to be president. It's not rocket science. So that's why Sister Angela Davis made the point that she made. And then there's more stuff about the uncommitted movement. And this is really important. There was actually a movement, an anti-Kamala Harris organization called Uncommitted. And this is interesting. Here's what they said. The Uncommitted movement, the pro-Palestinian group critical of the Biden and Harris administration's handling in the war of Gaza. The group added that it opposes a Donald Trump presidency whose agenda includes plans to accelerate the killing in Gaza while intensifying suppression of anti-war organizing. But here's the thing. That group then said, but in the general election, they said, don't support a third party candidate. Now, they didn't come out and say, vote for Madam Vice President, but they said, don't vote for Trump. And don't vote for a third party. So what were they telling you? They were a wink and a nod because they realized what was going on. And I got about 5 minutes left, so let me get to, this is really important, Zionism. And the person I had the debate with, I sent this to him or her. I'm not going to say who it is, but check this out. Zionism. The Democratic Party is horrible, but the Republican Party is objectively worse. So what I'm about to say, now I don't want anybody leaving here thinking that I'm saying that the Democrats are pro-Palestinian. Of course not. Check this out. Democrats, 2024, Benjamin Netanyahu opposed Harris for president. 2024, Benjamin Netanyahu endorsed Trump for president. What more is there to say? Why would he support him but not her? And you yelling at her all day long, yelling, calling her a Zionist and yelling and screaming while the biggest Zionist on the planet supports her opponent. You don't even have to know who is running against Trump. Just support the other guy, the other woman. So that's the first thing. Netanyahu endorsed Trump and opposed Harris. That's the first thing. The second thing, Democrats, and this is an average, Democrats under their policy, 1,400 Palestinians killed monthly in the year 2024. Republicans, 2,200 Palestinians killed monthly in 2025. Look at the numbers there. So am I praising the Democrats for killing only 1,400? Of course not. I'm saying that the difference, if I do the math, it's on 800. That's 800 people alive that wouldn't have been otherwise. So don't talk to me about I'm not supporting any of them because I don't like Madam Vice President Kamala Harris or Joe Biden. Stop being so emotional and be strategic. Those 800 lives would have been saved under different circumstances. Let's keep it moving. Democrats in 2024, Harris called for a ceasefire, called for a two-state solution, and called for humanitarian aid. Same year, 2024, Trump, no ceasefire, kill all the Palestinians. No two-state solution, Palestinians get nothing, and no humanitarian aid. It's right there, folks. It's right there. And again, am I saying that she was a savior to the Palestinians? No. But I would much rather have a fight with the guy who has a small switchblade than the guy who has a double-barrel shotgun. It's as simple as that. I know the guy with the switchblade going to try to cut me, and he might kill me, but I got a better chance with him. It's as simple as that. Let's keep it moving. Democrats, 2023, Biden gave $3.8 billion in military aid to Israel over a 12-month period. 2025, Trump gave $4 billion in military aid in just 11 months. You might say, what's the difference between 3.8 and 4.0? The answer is a lot of money. A lot of money that the bad guy wouldn't have had. It's just do the math. Stop being so emotional. Let's keep it going. Democrats support Gaza reconstruction. Republicans, no, they want to turn it into a resort, literally a resort for foreign, not terrorists, but tourists, same thing. All right. Democrats, very quickly, 18% of Democratic voters view Israel positively. 55% of Republican voters view Israel positively. You might say, well, Mike, you're just making up these numbers. Well, yeah, I did make them up. No, I didn't make them up. I just check out a couple sources. One, Statistica. Statistica is the leading statistical website on the planet. They located in like about 30, 40 different countries. So just find out where these numbers came from, Statistica, and also the U.S. Embassy in Israel and the House Commerce Committee. This is where I got these numbers from. So you can do the research yourself. Let me wrap this up in 3 minutes. I have so much. When the uncommitted movement, although they didn't endorse Kamala, they did tell the public, don't vote for Trump and don't vote for third party. I'm embarrassed, folks, to read to you what I'm about to read to you because I love Dr. Cornel West. I'm not going to call him a double agent, but I'm going to say that he was naive. He might have been well-intentioned, but the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Check this out. June 5 of 2023, he ran for president as the People's Party candidate. About a week or two later, he decided he wanted to run as the Green Party candidate. 4 months later, he said he didn't want to do either of those two, became an independent candidate. Then about 3 months later in January, he created his own party, Justice for All Party. And then 7 months later in August, he dropped out. But here was a disturbing part, and I had to check 5, 6, 7 sources. I love that man. Republicans represented Cornel West to be on the ballot. Simple as that. I mean, I break it down here. Republicans, spearheaded primarily by convicted voting fraudster Mark Jacoby, collected petition signatures to get West on the ballot in Arizona, in Maine, in Michigan, Nebraska, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Virginia, Wisconsin. Why would Republicans send free lawyers for Cornel West? But the better question is, why would he accept it? Keep it moving. The Republican National Lawyers Association, there's a group called the Republican National Lawyers Association, which included Brian Tyson of Georgia, Phil Stratch of North Carolina, and John Birch of Michigan, along with Trump's campaign lawyers, represented West to get him on the ballot in Michigan and Pennsylvania. By the way, one of West's lawyers is known for filing lawsuits to end affirmative action. Why would Cornel West accept that? When he was confronted by it, he simply said that he will accept support from any source. And that takes me back very quickly, 1 minute, actually 2 minutes. Doctor, they give me 2 minutes. At the end, I say here, remember what Green Party candidate Ralph Nader. Ralph Nader was the leading consumer advocate. If there was anything being done to consumers in America, the go-to guy was Ralph Nader, a sharp Harvard-trained lawyer who would help the people. He either intentionally or unintentionally helped Republican George Bush defeat Democrat Al Gore in the 2000 presidential election by just 537 votes. And those 537 votes came from the pivotal state of Florida because Ralph Nader got about 97,000 votes that could have gone to Al Gore. And we wouldn't have the legacy of George Bush. Very quickly, let me see if there's anything else I wanted to. Oh, the other thing I want to say about voting. When you talk about whether it's the mayor, the governor, even the president, as a lawyer, I can tell you one of the most powerful abilities a president has is to appoint federal judges. And we all know about 9 U.S. Supreme Court judges. But if you think that's all the damage he can do, you don't know. The president has the authority to appoint 1,770 federal judges, federal district court judges, lifetime appointment, Circuit Court of Appeal judges, lifetime appointment, U.S. Supreme Court, lifetime appointment. In fact, here's the breakdown. Supreme Court, 9, Court of Appeals, 179, district courts, 677. You think that's all? No. There's magistrate judges, international trade judges, bankruptcy judges, tax judges, federal claims judges, armed forces appeals judges, veteran claims. So when you tell me that you don't like what Madam Vice President Kamala Harris represents because you don't like her position on Zionism, I love my Palestinian brothers and sisters, but the world is bigger than that. I love Black people. I'm fighting for Black people's rights. I'm not going to throw gays out the window. I'm not going to throw women out the window. I'm not going to throw the handicapped out the window. And for me, Black people are the most important, but they're not the only thing. If a Black candidate came along and says, I'm going to give every Black person $1 million, but I'm going to torture and rape and rob all Asian people. I'm like, what? I love the fact you're giving us $1 million, but I'm not going to let you do this to our yellow brothers and sisters. So for me, it's not just about your position on that one thing, that Palestinian thing, that Black thing. It's got to be the bigger picture. And the bottom line, folks, and I had much more, but I see Dr. A. Oh, I got a solution. I can't forget the solution. I also got some stuff very quickly in my last few seconds. I'm pretty much on time. Check out Project 2025 Observer. This tells you exactly what Project 2025 was about and how much progress the guy in the White House made. Almost 50% of what he tried to get, he's gotten 48%. Check this tracker, it'll break it down. And then that's really frightening. And finally, I talked about the problems. Here's the solutions. This is what we need to do, folks. First, you got to vote. And it has here 10 lessons for stronger movements. And here's the thing. Imperfect allies are not enemies. That person, WRD, that I had a debate with about Zionism, we disagree on Madam Vice President, but we're still allies and comrades. We can disagree on that, put that in our back pocket, and keep moving. That's why, number one, critique to build, not to tear down. I'm listening to him. He's listening to me. He's not trying to tear me down. I'm not trying to tear him down. We're trying to hear it so we can build and move forward. Next, organize, don't just argue. That person I was spending time with today, after the argument, we decided to have a meeting in a couple of weeks to figure out what we can do. Next, movements win, not individuals. It's got to be a group of us as a movement. And I already mentioned this, perfection is the enemy of progress. There's never going to be a perfect candidate. Even if we dug Malcolm up, there's some Black Christians that wouldn't like the fact that he's Muslim. Simple as that. So it's not about what we disagree upon. Let's focus on what we agree upon. Ego kills movements. People's head gets too big. Plan for the long game, not just about winning this primary or this general in November. Plan for the long game. Meet people where they are. I'm a strict vegan now, but before I became a vegan, you couldn't tell me anything about a ham sandwich. I was going to eat that ham sandwich no matter what you said. So you got to meet people where they are and talk to them on that level. Power doesn't care about people's feelings. That's key, because we get caught in the emotional thing, but power doesn't care about that. Division is a weapon used by elites. Don't play along. So even though this person and I disagree on the whole Zionist thing and the Democratic establishment, we still got to come together. And the final thing is, how do we come together? One of the biggest things we're dealing with now, and I promise to take 30 seconds, is, and this is where I said there's more issues than the issue of the important issue of Zionism. There's the stuff going on in Sudan and the Congo today, but there's a bunch of stuff. One of the things I want to make clear is that if Madam Vice President Kamala Harris was president, we wouldn't have to worry about the slave memorial at 6th and Market about to be shut down. That just wouldn't happen. We wouldn't have to worry about DEI ending. We wouldn't have to worry about any of that stuff. Is she the savior of the world? Of course not. So what I'm asking people to do after laying out the problems is, there's a group called ATTAC, ATAC, Avenging the Ancestors Coalition. And I don't know how many people got here, about 400, 500, whatever. ATTAC has some new buttons, and these are really powerful buttons. I think I got about maybe 60 or 70. So before I leave here, I'll give them to the first 60 or 70 people. Join ATTAC, because we're not only fighting to save the Memorial 6th and Market, we branched out to do a whole bunch of things. But we're a grassroots, pro-Black, unapologetically Black organization. We do have white members, but they got to sign a contract saying that we traced our lineage to John Brown. And if you write that, we'll let you in, and then you're cool. Seriously, that's our membership agreement. But my point is, you got to join a movement. Individuals are never going to change anything. It's got to be a movement. And right now, this ATTAC organization is fighting the good fight and winning the good fight. And I want to thank Dr. Sante and Dr. Ade for giving me this time. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you all.
All right, put your hands together one more time. All right. As you get a couple questions ready, I just want to make sure you're reminded that December 7th, Dr. Asante will be talking about unreasonable facts of classical Africa. In January, we're going to have Joyce King talk about the origin and future of Afrocentric brotherhood. And on January 18th, Lucas Martin, history. It's going to be the African future in Brazil. February 15th, Brother Tugu will be back talking about the great tragedy of Africa's war on culture. And maybe Brother Suleiman might, swap out, because I think they rearranged the schedule for that. And March 1st, Stanley Crawford, Africans overcoming the problem of being kidnapped. That's going to be a deep one. And make sure in these times of tariffs that we are very mindful to support our institutions. And we're going to get into Q&A, but I want to make sure I really talk to us about putting our money where our mouth is and understanding that we have enemies. We have enemies of this kind of community building, this kind of consciousness, these kind of conversations. So the same way when Barack and Michelle were dancing and Beyonce was singing, they bragged about the meeting they were having at the same time to obstruct everything that he was going to do for the next 4 years. They laughed about it and bragged about it, Mitch McConnell and others. So as we're building, people are plotting our destruction. So as you exit, if you're able, ma'am and sir, please continue to support the Institute. With that being said, we're going to do about 3 questions. Maybe 1 or 2 online, right? The good brother usually stays for a few minutes and you can ask him a question as well. So if you don't get your question, you don't got to do the Radio Raheem. You can just walk up to the brother and ask him. And if you can't get it today, he'll give you the email. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say this. This is question and answer. This is not lecture and answer. I know y'all got testimonies. I know y'all are well read and got a lot on your heart and mind. But for the sake of time, please, ma'am and sir, just ask y'all questions. We might be able to get 4 or 5 if we just ask our question. Okay, with that being said, thank you very much. And one thing I did want to say, I'm so glad you mentioned the appointments, because I was somewhere in between some of those other brothers when I worked at WRD and where Brother Coard stood. I was sort of in the middle, right? And then I learned about the amount of appointees that the president had the authority over. 1,300 with congressional approval and 4,000 in total. I said, I had no business judging somebody's personality as a means of how to make my decision. I can completely hate you at that point if you're going to decide 4,000 jobs. I'm talking about head of FEMA, right? Head of HUD, like, and all like the things that really matter. But with that being said, 3 or 4, let's do it, y'all. Okay, I'll do 1, 2, 3, 4. I got you. So y'all gotta hold your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4.
The revolution will not be televised, but it does occur in the mind. And to my right, I have a young man that I brought here with me. I called him at 2:00 and said, I need you to come with me. He's returning to the community. He's seeking direction, guidance, and connection. And I brought him here because I felt he could get some of that today.
Well, I want to thank you for that, and I'd like to hear from him for a couple seconds, but I want to make sure I give him my number before I run out of here. But thank you for bringing him. He's a young man, and the revolution is about young people. What's your name, sir?
My name is Ezekiel.
And we appreciate you coming here. Is there anything you wanted to ask me? I'll talk to you before we leave here. Anything you want to ask in particular now while you have the mic?
Not really.
All right, well, that's cool. That's cool. I got to get out of here, so I was hoping you were going to say that. So thank you very much. So we'll talk while I'm leaving.
No, but shout out to everybody returning, because we don't
give
enough attention. 1, 2.
Good afternoon, everybody. I just wanted to ask, when is the next attack meeting?
You are a smart man. I'm glad you asked. I was supposed to announce that. 2 dates I want to give folks. The attack meeting is the first Monday of each month. I believe that's December 1. Is that right? Is December 1 on a Monday? Anybody can check. But anyway, it's the first Monday of each month. I believe that's December 1. It's at Zion Baptist Church. It's Monday. All right, December 1. 6:30 p.m., Zion Baptist Church, Broad and Venango. Once again, first Monday of each month. So the next one will be Monday, December 1, 6:30 p.m., Zion Baptist Church, Broad and Venango. And 6:30. In addition to that, Attack is part of an umbrella organization that includes architects, archaeologists, tour guides, preservationists, that is supporting Attack's effort to save the memorial at 6th and Market. That meeting is going to be on November 18, 6:30 p.m., Mother Bethel Church, 6th and Lombard. November 18, Mother Bethel Church, 6:30 p.m., 6th and Lombard. I'm 99% sure that date is correct. So this is what I want you to do. Email Attack at atac.avengingtheancestors@gmail.com. My wonderful assistant, Dana Carter, just texted me and said, you're wrong. It's the 17th. So I'll give you the email anyway, but change that date. Mother Bethel AME, 6th and Lombard, 6:30 p.m. on November 17. And for more information about Attack and this umbrella group, email us to be on our contact list, please. That's atac.avengingtheancestors@gmail.com. atac.avengingtheancestors@gmail.com. Please email us, say you're interested, and you'll get all the updates. So thank you. So that would be December 1 at Zion for Attack, and for the larger group, November 17 at Mother Bethel. Thanks for asking. I was supposed to announce that. Anybody else? Yes, certainly. atac.avengingtheancestors@gmail.com. Oh, my own? The more important one. Michael Coard X@gmail.com. MichaelCoard, letter X as in Malcolm X. Michael Coard X@gmail.com. Thank you. Yes, sir. You had a question with the microphone.
Yes, I have a question. Let's say if a state votes in a
I guess a referendum
Mhm.
or a resolution towards voting within an ordinance of affirmative action or anything like Voting Rights Act, Civil
Sure.
Rights Act, the vagrancy law, but they don't call it vagrancy laws anymore, is reverse discrimination, I guess.
Okay.
How would those actions be reprimanded in court, and what kind of attorneys would be able to represent for plaintiffs in those matters?
Excellent question. And here's the answer. It's the long version. I'll give you the 30-second version. First, in regard to the lawyers groups, there's two groups who are excellent on civil rights issues, and these groups are progressive. The first is the ACLU. ACLU is a bunch of revolutionary lawyers. So go to aclu.org and you can reach out to them. A guy who used to work with Larry Krasner is now the executive director of the Pennsylvania chapter. So the first thing is aclu.org. There's an even more revolutionary group of lawyers called the National Lawyers Guild. These are hardcore revolutionaries that became lawyers. The National Lawyers Guild. Check that out. And if you don't get what you need from them immediately, just email me and I'll put you in touch with it. Oh, the third thing I want to say is this. Unfortunately, even though I'm a lawyer and I took the oath to uphold the Constitution, I don't really have too much confidence in the courts, because even if you win in the state court, the government can appeal to the federal court. They got the Supreme Court locked down. I could win in the district court. I could win the Circuit Court of Appeals. But what's going to happen when I go to the Supreme Court? So what I tell people, do this. Let the lawyers raise issues in the courts and let the people raise hell in the streets. That's the only solution. Mumia is alive today only because the people are raising hell in the streets.
Right. Yeah.
The lawyers did their thing, but the raising hell kept them alive.
Okay, Michael Coard. I remember the assignment you gave all the members of ATTACK, that was to get a hold of those people who want to stop the Civil War monuments from being built or conserved. And
I take your word for it. I don't remember it, but go ahead.
anyway, the ACLU, they are willing to team up with ATTACK.
Okay.
And there's also a person you probably have heard of. Her name is Eleanor Holmes Norton.
Yes, sir.
She's not activist. She's a politician
Mhm.
in DC, and she wants to stop the return of a statue of a Civil War hero of the Confederacy. So she wants to work with us, or us to work with her. So
Fair
I
enough.
have all the information in here, all the people who want to help us or work with us, and I'll give you a copy of this.
Fair enough. You know, Eleanor Holmes Norton, a great elected official, but a shadow congressperson. She has no power. She can't vote because she's from DC. Think about that. We're in 2025, and the nation's capital, the residents, don't have a senator.
Right.
That's what the U.S. government was founded upon: taxation without representation. DC got to pay federal taxes, but they don't have anybody in the Senate. And Eleanor Holmes Norton can't vote.
Right.
Yeah, and that's fine. I mean, we'll use whatever sources we can use. Who else was next? Anybody else? All right. Can we give Dr. Ade a big round of applause?
No, thank y'all so much. Matter of fact, hold up. Just smile one time. Just ready? Hold up. Matter of fact, let me do it like this.
Oh, yeah, I see.
We're here at the Left Can't Asante Institute. Great presentation for the English Black man in America, Michael Coard. Make some noise, everybody. 5535 Germantown Avenue. Consciousness. That's right. And what's the name of the newsletter coming out, good brother?
The Angry Black Man News.
You always got to do the business, the commercials, and all that. No.
And one final thing I do want to say
Okay,
very quickly,
you got it.
and you can read between the lines. More important to Black people in America today than the 13th Amendment is the Second Amendment. Read between the lines.
All right. I think they read because it got quiet. Well, Doc said we call upon ancestors far and near, the mother of our mother, the father of our fathers, to render mercy. And I want to make sure I wish y'all safety during this holiday season, not just physical safety, but I know that it's difficult sometimes to be around people that you love that might not be where you are in terms of your conscious journey. So be brave. Don't do too much. You know, don't try to convert everybody, but you know, don't be a closeted conscious person either. So find that balance and just know that we're here when you get back, you know. So take care. And on your way out, if you can support the Institute, that'll be wonderful. We love y'all. Ashe.